Have you ever stopped to wonder why some of the most brilliant minds in history preferred solitude? What leads great thinkers to feel repulsed by social life? And is isolation truly a curse, or a privilege reserved for those who are spiritually and intellectually more sensitive? Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most impactful and somber philosophers of the 19th century, had sharp answers to these questions, answers that directly confront the way we live today. To him, society was an empty theater. The world was filled with superficial people, driven by futile desires, empty conversations, and meaningless routines. Schopenhauer believed that the deeper a person's mind, the more they would be repelled by this scenery. Solitude, then, was not a choice. It was a natural consequence of wisdom. He wrote, "Solitude is the fate of all exceptional spirits." It wasn't merely a defense of introspection. It was a raw observation that the more conscious a person becomes, the harder it is to fit into the trivial distractions of the world. But was he right? Or was this contempt for social life simply a symptom of someone who didn't know how to connect? That's a question that echoes through time. When we look at history, we see names like Nikola Tesla, Isaac Newton, Emily Dickinson, Beethoven, Kant, all geniuses, all marked by solitude. That's no coincidence. It's not random. For them, solitude was the only space where they could be truly free to think, to create, to exist. It was as if social life, with all its masks and demands for performance, acted as a barrier to elevated thought. Schopenhauer said, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." And he added, "If you don't love solitude, you won't love freedom, because it is only when you're alone that you're truly free." These words resonate in a world like ours, a world that preaches constant connection yet drowns in distraction. To him, society was not a place of true communion, but a suffocating space where intellect was crushed by social expectations, superficiality, and selfish desires. And that feeling of displacement, he believed, was inevitable for those with an awakened mind. Of course, this distancing comes at a price. Many of the greatest thinkers in history were consumed by periods of anguish, depression, and anxiety. Not because they were weak, quite the opposite. They saw the world with such depth that the weight of existence became heavier to carry. They could see where most saw nothing, and that's what made them different. The question is this isolation a curse, or a sign that you're on a different level of perception? For Schopenhauer, it was a disguised blessing. He believed true thinkers should embrace solitude as a gift, because only in silence, only away from societal mediocrity, can the mind reach its highest achievements. This perspective invites us to reflect. Are we really tapping into the full potential of our minds? Or are we too distracted by the noise of the world? Schopenhauer saw social life as an act, a performance, a theater where people play roles and hide their true intentions behind carefully constructed masks. According to him, most people live to please, to compete, to accumulate. Truly living is a rare thing. He viewed social gatherings as transactions. No depth, no soul, no authenticity. The search for external validation, for status, praise, prestige, was, in his eyes, the opposite of living with real awareness. His philosophy stated, sociability, for the majority, is just a mask to disguise the void. That was his harshest criticism, and perhaps the most accurate. Because we are indeed surrounded by distractions, shallow conversations, and interactions that never touch the spirit. In that setting, the one who thinks too much, feels too much, and sees too much ends up feeling like a stranger, as if they live in a world that wasn't made for them. In Schopenhauer's view, true thinkers, those with a higher spiritual and intellectual calling, should not try to fit in. They must accept their uniqueness, their solitude, and their own path. And that's where true transformation happens, when solitude stops being a pain and becomes a sanctuary. Solitude, for many, is still synonymous with emptiness. But for Schopenhauer, and for so many other great thinkers throughout history, solitude was the temple where the spirit could breathe. He believed that genius demanded silence, and that true greatness could only flourish when the soul was free from the demands of the outer world. But that freedom comes with a price. Schopenhauer didn't romanticize isolation. He knew that living away from social conventions also came with emotional burdens, a weight that not everyone is ready to carry. Behind the great mind, there is also a heart that feels, a heart that often suffers from distance, rejection, and misunderstanding. Nietzsche, another giant of philosophical thought, also valued solitude, but in his works he admitted it could be painful. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he described the philosopher as a hermit who comes down from the mountain to share his wisdom, only to be rejected. The truth, no matter how beautiful, is not always welcome. Schopenhauer saw that dilemma clearly. To him, there was one solution. Don't try to fit in. Learn to observe the world with detachment. An awakened mind should not fight against superficiality. It must learn to walk through it. That philosophical detachment was the key. He taught that the true sage must maintain emotional neutrality in the face of the world's mediocrity, not out of arrogance, but for self-preservation. It was as if the thinker were a diver in shallow waters. He knows there's depth, but most people don't want to, or simply can't reach it. So, what should we do? Schopenhauer's answer was clear. Accept solitude as an ally. Dive into your own ideas. Embrace introspection. And above all, preserve your mental freedom, something that's quickly lost in excessive contact with banality. In his most famous work, The World as Will and Representation, Schopenhauer states that the world as we know it is merely an illusion projected by our minds. Therefore, social life, with all its masks and performances, is nothing but a distraction that pulls us away from our essence. And that essence can only be accessed when we retreat from the noise, when we quiet the sound of others' opinions, of external validation, of imposed expectations. It's in that silence that truth reveals itself. For him, the more intelligent a person is, the less they need others to feel whole. The elevated mind seeks meaning, not approval. It seeks wisdom, not fame. It seeks self-knowledge, not groups. Acceptance. That's why, according to him, isolation is the destiny of exceptional spirits. Not because they are better than others, but because they simply don't find in social interaction what their soul truly desires. This leads us to a powerful reflection. How many times have you felt out of place in a crowd? How many times have you preferred the silence of your mind over the noise of shallow conversations? How many times have you wondered if there was something wrong with wanting to be alone? Maybe what you're feeling isn't loneliness, but freedom. But caution is needed. Misunderstood solitude can become suffering. Prolonged isolation can feed sadness, hopelessness, and a sense of meaninglessness. That's why Schopenhauer advocated for a life of contemplation, not complete isolation. He didn't support abandoning society, but transcending it. You can live in the world without being attached to it. You can connect with others without losing yourself. You can love without forgetting who you are. The key lies in balance. Many geniuses understood this. Beethoven, even in the midst of deafness and solitude, composed symphonies that still echo today. Emily Dickinson, secluded in her room, wrote poems that crossed centuries. Newton, immersed in his thoughts, revolutionized science. All of them showed us that solitude, when understood and well lived, can be the greatest source of creation. So the real question is, do you have the courage to listen to yourself? In today's noisy world, where we are constantly stimulated with notifications, social media, pressure and comparisons, stopping to listen to your own soul is an act of resistance. It's a radical gesture of self-love. And maybe that's exactly what Schopenhauer wanted to show us, that the path to wisdom doesn't lie in crowds, but in inner silence. And have you found that silence yet? Have you allowed your mind to dive deep into itself without distractions, without masks, without fear? If not yet, maybe it's time to try, to seek that refuge where your mind shines brighter, where thought flows without barriers, where the soul finds peace. After all, as Schopenhauer wrote, solitude is the fate of all exceptional spirits. Maybe it's your fate too. But how do we walk this path of introspection without falling into the trap of emotional isolation? How do we turn solitude into fertile ground for spiritual growth, instead of a silent prison for the mind? Schopenhauer believed the secret lies in the quality of connection, not the quantity. He didn't preach a life of total withdrawal, but rather a carefully selective life. The thinker shouldn't seek crowds, but compatible souls. And that takes discernment. It takes presence. Instead of sinking into interactions that drain energy, he suggested cultivating relationships that expand consciousness, friendships that elevate, dialogues that inspire, shared silences that heal. And when those connections aren't possible, let silence be welcome. It's important to remember that solitude is only dangerous when it lacks purpose, when it is empty of meaning. But when it is filled with reflection, creation, study, and spirituality, it becomes a sanctuary, a sacred place where the ego dissolves and truth reveals itself. Many modern spiritualists even view solitude as a necessary stage in the spiritual awakening process. It's in silence that we hear God. It's in the absence of external voices that we finally hear our own. And here lies a powerful truth. The isolation of great minds is not an escape from the world. It is a quest for something beyond the world. A deep desire to understand the mysteries of existence, to touch the infinite through thought, to live not on the edge of reality, but on a higher level of it. Those who, like you, feel this calling are not lost. They are simply walking a lesser traveled path. And like every sacred journey, it requires courage, renunciation, and faith. Faith that, even in solitude, you are not alone, because your true company lives within you, in your deepest thoughts, in your boldest visions, in your spiritual connections invisible to the eye, but evident to the soul. Maybe that's why so many geniuses preferred the silence of libraries over parties, the solitude of study over applause. They knew that true knowledge is not popular, that wisdom is not shouted, it is whispered. And to hear it, you must silence the world around you. But be careful. Solitude should not be used as a shield against life. It is a portal, not a hiding place. It must be lived with intention, not with resentment. It must serve to strengthen the spirit, not to escape pain. Because to flee pain is also to flee learning. Nietzsche said that the true philosopher lives at the edge between chaos and order. And it is on that narrow line, often walked alone, that true transformation happens. So don't mourn your distance from others. Use that space to dive deeper into yourself, to refine yourself, to rediscover yourself, to understand what truly matters. Because only those who truly know themselves can truly connect with others and with the whole. Many times, those chosen for great missions in this world are also the ones who go through long periods of solitude, as if the universe needed to take them out of the noise to prepare them in silence, so that later, when they return to the world, they are ready to fulfill it with greatness. Do you feel like you carry that calling? Then embrace this phase of your life with courage. Use this time to prepare. The solitude you feel today may be the seed of the purpose you'll live tomorrow. And if at any moment you feel unmotivated, remember this. Every great idea was born in silence. Every moment of illumination came from darkness. Every revolution began in the solitary mind of someone who dared to think differently. You can be that person. The difference between solitude that suffocates and solitude that transforms lies in the consciousness with which you live it. If it brings you closer to who you truly are, then it doesn't take you away from the world. It prepares you to change it. So go on. Continue your path with dignity, with wisdom, and with the trust that this apparent distance is, in truth, the beginning of your great approach to your destiny. Motivation you need, where your awareness expands and your soul finds direction. Maybe the greatest challenge for those with a brilliant mind is dealing with the weight of seeing what others ignore. When you see the world more clearly, you also see its ugliness, its hypocrisy, its vanity games. That can be painful, but it can also be liberating. And this is where the power of the chosen ones lies, not in trying to change the world by force, but in changing your inner vibration. becoming a beacon of silent awareness that illuminates without making noise. The true sage does not impose ideas. He inspires, not with force, but with example. If you feel that this message spoke directly to your soul, it's because a part of you already knew all of this. It just needed to be reminded. You already carry this wisdom within you. What you are doing now is awakening it. Don't worry about being understood by everyone. Great spirits have always been misunderstood in their time. Don't try to convince those who are not ready. Just live your truth with serenity and strength. True connection does not happen through explanation, but through vibration. And if the price of intellectual freedom is solitude, let it be dignified, rich, and sacred. Let it be your inner cathedral, the space where your soul grows, far from the noise, close to the divine. Remember, the world may be noisy, but your soul is silence. The world may be chaotic, but your heart can be a temple. The world may be full of distraction, but you can be presence. From now on, look at your moments of solitude differently, not as rejection, but as retreat, not as punishment, but as invitation, a call to go deeper, to go beyond, to become what no one expects, but what the world desperately needs. And if you still doubt your value, remember this. It's not the number of friends, parties, or followers that defines your worth, but the depth of your soul, the truth of your path, and the courage you have to be who you are, even when no one is watching. The great names in history walked alone for a long time before being recognized, and many were never understood, and yet they never stopped being themselves. That is strength, that is mission, that is greatness. So, if you carry that feeling of being out of place, maybe it's not because you're wrong, but because you're ahead. Because your role is not to fit in, it's to transform. And every transformation begins in silence. Embrace this journey with gratitude, with humility, with reverence, and with faith. Faith that every step you take, even in solitude, is being guided. Faith that there is a greater purpose. Faith that
while you move away from the noise of the world, you move closer to the voice of God. And never forget, motivation you need, where your awareness expands and your soul finds direction.